This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Audible, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. To get a free audiobook, visit audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, one of the Mac experts you always want to hear from is Mr. Jim Dalrymple of The Loop. Jim, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing good. The last time I kind of had you on my schedule, though, I happened to see in your Twitter feed that you weren't on the same continent. You had jaunted off to Ireland on me.
Yes, and I had a blast. I love Ireland.
Judging again from the tweets, it looks like you had a really good time.
I did. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun to go there. The people are really nice there. The place is very clean. I went to Dublin. Very clean and just a great place to hang out. And that's what I did. I went to a developer conference over there, the UL conference. So it was a good time.
Jim, I'm curious. I didn't know a lot about UL until you and a few others started talking about it. Why a developer conference in Ireland other than to support the European developer community?
Well, actually, there's a lot of people from the U.S. there, too. And Dublin has head offices for an increasing number of big companies, Google and I think GitHub has an office over there now. There are a number of companies that have offices in Dublin, and there are a lot of developers not only in Ireland but in, like you said, in the European community there that come over. But yeah, some Americans come over as well. I don't think there are any Canadian developers. I don't think Canadians develop.
Sure, they do.
They build igloos, but not much else.
Well, I think you're overstating that. I know some very fine Canadians who do a lot of good in the tech community. So, don't put them down.
I wouldn't put down Canadians.
I would hope not.
I just tell the truth. I mean,
I'm not going to win this, am I?
They drive dog sleds and build igloos. I mean, that's.
Well, Jim, what was the highlight of UL? Anything in particular? Or I don't want to say it was just a developer conference because that really sends the wrong message, but was that the typical fare as far as topics and sessions went?
No, it's so much more than a developer conference because it's there's a lot of design stuff. There's a lot of some real common sense stuff when it comes to usability and how apps should work. And it's not like here's a line of code and here's an error that you can make if you use this line of code. It's not like that. It's more broad than that, and it was really nice because somebody like me who's not a developer can go and sit down and get a lot out of all the talks. And I did. I went to all of them, had a great time. And I did a talk on opening night. And it was a panel discussion. And they announced all of the panel members, the 3 members of the panel. And then they announced me, and I came out with a Les Paul strapped on my shoulders and started playing guitar. And what people didn't know was that the panel was actually the name of the band. And we put on a 13-song show for everybody.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it has to be. Any particular issues that face, I guess, again, assuming that at least to some degree it focused on the European community, developer community, any particular unique issues that they face, Jim, over there, or is developing for the Mac and iOS pretty much a global experience at this point?
I think it is more of a global experience because, the issues that come up are certainly like iCloud syncing for developers is an issue. It's everywhere. That's a problem everywhere. Things aren't better or worse in the U.S. than they are anywhere else. Everybody's facing the same types of challenges with their apps, and they're looking at ways that they can make the apps better, usable for users. And that's what a lot of these talks were about. And it's why I recommended this conference so highly, because the guys look after every little detail of this conference. Nothing is left to chance. So the organizers really do a good job with it.
Jim, again, as I said before, I was not familiar with this until you, and I think Lex Friedman tweeted about it quite a bit. Is this an annual thing or a semi-annual, or how is this one organized?
It's an annual event in April, and I went last year and did a talk, and it's funny because the guy who put it on contacted me in November of last year and said, "Hey, we would like to have you come back to UL this year." And I said, "Oh, great." He said, "But we don't want you to speak." Oh, really? Was it that bad? No, we want you to play guitar. So that's how all that came about. But the people, the speakers that they have are top notch. I haven't seen a conference that has a better lineup of speakers than what these guys do. So that's nice. It's good to be able to go to a conference and get something out of each talk. Everybody has their favorite talks that people do. So that was UL. It was very nice, and it happens over a 3-day period, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, and they invited me back again already for next year. So I will be there in 2014. And then after Ireland, Monique and I went to Lithuania. Yeah.
Just as tourists.
Just as tourists. We went to see some friends and, just kind of hung out for a week in Lithuania. And it was, that's one of the Eastern Bloc countries. So it used to be. They just gained their independence in 1990 from the Soviet Union. But, they were part of the Soviet Union since 1950 or something like that. So, 40 years of Soviet rule certainly showed in the city. So that was very interesting.
I bet. It's always interesting to travel to different places and see different cultures, whether it's within the U.S. or Canada or Europe. You learn a lot and you get a lot of perspective and come home with a much different view of things.
Yeah, I agree. And I would go back there in a heartbeat. I would. So that's what we did.
The big question, did they have Heineken in Lithuania?
Well, I was with Monique, so, I kind of toned down a little bit.
I've never known you to tone down, Jim.
Okay, I didn't tone down.
That's better. That's better.
I tell you, I certainly didn't in Ireland, because there was Heineken flowing everywhere in Heineken or in Ireland. I love that.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you stocked up in Ireland before,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. I mean, I think I was still drunk on the plane on the way home from Ireland. And that was a week later.
Okay, I'm not sure we needed to know that, but we've never censored things here, so what the heck.
So, yeah, good trip overall. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Jim, if I don't bring this up right now, we'll both get emails on why we didn't discuss it. You have issued one of your famous yips to the question of whether iOS 7 will ship on time, which we know that means that iOS 7 will ship on time. The question is, what is on time when there's no announced date?
The thing that makes I don't often say things. I just try and sit back and keep my mouth shut. But when people like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and some of these other publications keep coming out with stories that are wrong, you really, I feel that something has to be said, And when All Things D came out with a story that was right, I wanted to make sure that I reinforce that story is correct. That's what's happening. But I have an issue with the way that a lot of reporting is done these days. I don't really believe that a lot of the reporters know what they're talking about. I don't believe that they put enough effort into really understanding the market. There was a story today from The Street. TheStreet.com, you would expect good things from a financial publication like The Street. They said that Microsoft shipped 42 million Surface tablets today. And I thought, wow, really? They shipped 42 million? Apple is in trouble then if they did that.
Yeah.
But when you look at the IDC press release, they copied the words wrong. That was all tablets together. All companies sold 42 million, not Microsoft, but they threw Microsoft's name in there, and all of a sudden Microsoft sold 42 million. The problem is people will read that, and that's what they'll use now. People read that all day long, and that's what they'll go tonight and sit down with their spouse or their colleagues and say, yeah, Microsoft shipped like 40 million. Apple only shipped 19 million. So I guess the Surface is doing really good. And it's not up to the public, to the general public, to be able to understand if those numbers are correct. It's up to the reporters. It's us that have to make sure that the numbers are correct. So, yeah, that's why I did that with the iOS 7 story, because I just wanted to kind of set the record straight, that these other stories were wrong.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that particular article. I saw that in your dissection of it, and if I remember correctly, the bottom line was that Microsoft shipped like 900,000 tablets as compared to Apple's 19 point something million. So yeah, I'm with you, and unfortunately, you can't help but at some point. I guess maybe I've just become paranoid after all this time, but you have to wonder if there isn't some measure of intentional manipulation or intentional mistake. Yeah. And that's a big charge. And I'm not even making it as a charge. It's just the ravings of somebody paranoid enough who sees things that so often seems to swing one particular direction that you just have to wonder after a while if it may be one step beyond link bait.
Well, and I think a lot of this stuff is link bait, because if you say, Apple is doing good, nobody will click and nobody will go to your site. If you say, Apple's in real trouble, oh my God, then everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, let's click on that because Apple's in trouble. And it's all about page views for these sites. And, some of us, I don't get paid based on page views. I don't get paid based on how many people click the one ad that I do have on the site. That's not how I run things. It's not the model that I have. So if people come to the site, they come because they want to. And these other sites, they get paid based on the amount of impressions they get. They get paid based on the click-throughs. So there's a big difference in the model for the business, and a big difference in how you write what you write.
Yeah,
So,
and I want to be real clear. I am not making any accusations, but you just have to wonder,
yeah,
and how quickly will a retraction be placed on the street, and how prominent will it be, and how many people will pick up on that. Look, we all make mistakes, and it's
yeah.
easy to. It's just unfortunate that something like that is so glaring and so over the top, and then gets picked up by so many other places, and there's so much damage done in the wrong direction. And I don't mean anti-Apple. I mean, just bad investment advice floating around out there.
Yep, stock market. I mean, it has an effect on everything, and that is unfortunate. And you're absolutely right. Mistakes do happen, but it seemed like with this one they were going in with the idea, because the headline was something like "Look out, Apple! Microsoft enters the top 5," but the story didn't support, or from IDC, the press release didn't support what they wanted to say. So they wrote it anyway, but they have since changed it.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yes.
I hadn't looked back.
There's just a little thing saying this was changed.
Yeah, well, that's always the problem with retractions. They get the clicks, and then the retractions don't get the clicks.
Yeah. So the retraction is, on the old newspaper days, the retraction's on page 50.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's like, let's revise the headline to, Microsoft is in trouble. Look out. Yeah. Look out, Microsoft,
Yeah.
I don't know. The thing that, to go back to the iOS 7 thing, though, it just amazes me with that all the reporting out there that this is going to be late, that's going to be late, when nothing has been announced.
No.
I mean, okay, we all know now iOS 7 is coming, all right, that's fine. But there's no announced date to miss or to be late on so far. It's all what somebody says, well, I expect that it should be out by July 1st, and therefore, if it ships on July 2nd, it's late.
Right. And that's, I believe it was a Bloomberg article that said that iOS 7 was going to be late. But how can it be late? Late for what? Right. Late for the shipping date of, Apple has never said. So the Bloomberg article was wrong. But they feel that they can say that it was late because they have sources that tell them that it's late. But we still don't know what.
Right.
So it confuses people. It confuses the market. It confuses the industry because Bloomberg, thinks that they have sources that say that it's late. But they're wrong.
I think it's important to say right now that we had these same conversations when Apple stock was, going through the roof. Mm-hmm. So this is not about the stock price or us being unhappy about it. It's really about getting it right and having accurate information. Because when we look at this and we know a little something about this area of the news, the tech news, then you can't help but look at the political news, the foreign policy news, every other news, and say, gee, could the same level of questionable reporting or inaccuracy be going on there too? And if so, how do any of us have an intelligent opinion about anything that matters?
Well, I don't think that many of the analysts these days have an intelligent opinion about anything. I really don't. I have little to no respect for any financial analyst that's out there.
And isn't that a shame, Jim? Because I don't think that they need to be doing this to have the respect and to have people listen to them. They don't need link bait, do they?
Well, yeah, they do.
Why, if you're an analyst and drawing a salary, do you need link bait? Just let the numbers do the talking. Make your predictions.
You need people talking about you because that makes your company in the news. And when your company is in the news, then maybe you get more business because of that, or your company gets more business because you're a senior financial analyst and you made these predictions about Apple. They're total crap, but you made the predictions and you get in all of these websites wrote about you. Oh, well, you're great. You're a great analyst. The analysts are no better than the link bait headlines.
I have to admit, I didn't think about it that way. I look at it, I guess, as the analyst gets a salary, and gee, I'd like to believe he's being paid for being right instead of how much controversy, but I guess not.
Look at. I'm going to take a quick look here. Today, Horace Dadu.
Sure. And Horace does a very nice job.
Horace does a great job. So here's what Horace said today in an interview that I linked to about financial analysts. So paradoxically, the opinion of those who are highly paid should be treated with suspicion, while the opinion of those subject to peer review should be treated with respect. It brings to mind the difference between highly paid fortune tellers and pundits whose methods are obscure versus poorly paid graduate students whose methods are open to all, whose opinion is worth more. It's a very good, if the listeners don't know Horace, he's an extremely smart man. And he is listed as being one of the amateur analysts, as opposed to the Wall Street pros. But Horace is right more than they are. Yeah. So Horace is very, very intelligent man. I have a great deal of respect for Horace and his opinions. But even he says that the financial analysts are, maybe with some suspicion, treat their stuff
compromised.
Yeah. So I don't have any respect. I really don't.
It's too bad we keep having to have these conversations, but you just see what has to feel like a pattern. And again, mistakes happen. We all understand that. You've made them. I've made them. That's the way it is. But what's the saying? First time is was it coincidence? Second time is hapstance. Third time is enemy action. What happens when you get to about the 45th time?
Yeah, really. And the more that websites cover these people, the more the analysts do it. They come out with, what's going to happen tomorrow if an analyst comes out and says, we expect Apple's shipments to be cut in half. Every website on the planet is going to cover that because this analyst said it. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the analyst gets in the news, and, it might not be true. And they could say by 2015 this is going to happen. How often do we go back now in 2013 and look at 2011 and see what analysts said and see if they were right or not? We don't. So they're not held to any kind of ridicule or you said this was going to happen and it didn't, so you're fired. No, they get in the news. Their company get in the news, so all is good. Doesn't matter.
And now a word from our sponsor, Audible, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Last week, I suggested that, in preparation for the new Star Trek movie, you go to Audible and check out their collection of Star Trek-related novels, books, and more. Many of you thanked me. Many of you wanted to know why I was overlooking Audible's great collection of Star Wars-related content. Patience, young Padawan. That's what I had planned for this time. So here we go. If you search Audible's vast collection of audio material for Star Wars, you will discover 168 titles for your enjoyment. From authors like Timothy Zahn, Kevin J. Anderson, K.W. Jeter, Walter John Williams, and many more, you can immerse yourself in the Star Wars universe. There's plenty of time between now and the new Star Wars movies, so get listening. And you can get started on your journey with a free book and 30 days of Audible, free, just for going to audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices and signing up. No commitment, no obligation, just a free book to to find out how easy and enjoyable listening to your books can be. Again, that's a free book and 30 days free from Audible for new users by visiting audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices. You know this is coming. May the force be with you. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. It's sort of, to turn the topic a little bit on its ear, it's interesting that we have developed into that much of a media culture. I mean, I think we knew it was happening, but I don't think that when we put this kind of thing into that perspective, that we realized it was really that important. But at this point, it really is all about the eyeballs that you can bring to something, or the ears, in our case. It really has become less and less about the quality of things. And Apple is a company that does seem to buck that trend.
Yeah. Apple does buck the trend, but it's so hard to figure out, because as much as Apple can make their way around all of the analyst stuff and all of the stories and all of the rumors and all of that kind of stuff, they end up being brought in by the stock market, which is just what happened. The stock falls. So, now Apple has to try and figure out what to do with that. And this stuff is so frustrating to me, because what happens when Apple goes $17 billion in debt? Their stock goes up. So here's Wall Street with a company that has $135 billion in the bank, selling products like crazy, and Wall Street drives their stock down. So they take a viable, happy company that's doing great things and just crucifies them. But as soon as they go in debt, oh, yeah, we like that.
Yeah. And there's another section of the press that demonizes Apple for keeping the money offshore and not repatriating it and paying the tax, which I still think is a fascinating phenomenon. Like you say, they issue it's such a bad situation. They issue a bond. They give a bond issue rather than repatriate that money and pay the tax, because it's cheaper. It's simple.
Right.
It's simple finances. So that shouldn't surprise anyone. And yet, Apple, they're not paying their fair share. I'm waiting for somebody to come out with that. And my point always is the same one. Look, Apple didn't write the rules. Apple just is playing by them. So go blame the lawmakers. Go blame every administration as far back as you want to go. They were the ones that created it. It's just Apple said, okay, we'll play the game.
And if the lawmakers are going to try and crucify Apple for following these rules, then it might be worth somebody's while to take a look at where the lawmakers have their own money, because it's probably in the Cayman Islands.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah, Apple's not doing anything wrong with this money. They are following the rules. Just like every other company out there is following the rules. So they have this money, and they're going to do with it what they need to do. So they take a $17 billion bond sale, and they're going to do some more good things.
Again, it's running the company properly, and this is one you're not going to hear from the shareholders on, because the shareholders understand, and they're okay with it. They're going to pay the dividends that everybody has been so hot to see them pay, and they're financing it, and they're financing it cheaper than taking it out of their own pocket, which really does seem strange, but it's the way it is.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's any doubt, and nobody will argue, whether they're rich or poor, that it's the bottom 80% of the people in North America. In the U.S. and Canada, and maybe in other countries too. I don't know, but it's that bottom 80% that pay all the taxes. We're the ones that have to give up, however much of our salary for income taxes and taxes on the rich people. They have the accountants that funnel their money to all kinds of other places so that they don't have to pay. That's why we'll always stay where we are, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure I buy into that. I think that at some point, if the more disposable income you have, the more you can take gambles, you can play the game. There's no question about that. But at the same time, the rules are there. And so if you want to learn the rules and you want to exercise them, even with meager assets, you can still do it.
Oh, there's no doubt. But how many people do that?
Not a lot of people take the time to learn.
That's right.
That's the thing.
And just to be clear, we should be clear that Apple does pay millions upon tens of millions of dollars in taxes.
Yes.
We're not trying to say that they're skipping out on all of their taxes. Not only Apple, but their employees. I mean, they are responsible for a tremendous amount of income in the countries that they are in. Not only the U.S., but in other countries as well. So just to make sure that is straight.
And I think that's a really important point, Jim. And you sit there in Canada, I sit here in the U.S., and we both do the same thing that Apple does if we can at our level. If there's a deduction available to us, at least in my system, well, of course you're going to take it. You're not going to leave money on the table.
Yeah.
Same thing there. So why, when you're a corporate entity, which is just another entity, why wouldn't you take every advantage? And as a shareholder, I want them to take every advantage. I mean, that's why I've invested in the company, to have it run properly.
That's right.
Seems simple to me.
It seems simple to me, too.
All right. Well, let's go to something else simple.
Okay.
The other thing that I would get emails if I didn't ask you about was the BlackBerry CEO's comments that tablets will be gone in 5 years.
Oh, BlackBerry.
I'll just turn you loose, Jim. Just go for it.
You know what will be gone in 5 years? The CEO from BlackBerry.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty safe bet.
He'll be gone in 5 years. Now, there are a few things that he could have meant. He could have meant the way that we look at tablets and the way that we use tablets will change over the next 5 years. He could have phrased that so differently so that he wouldn't look like a complete idiot, but he didn't, and he does look like an idiot. Smartphones have changed quite a bit from where they were 5 years ago. Is it right to say that? I don't think anybody will be using a smartphone in 5 years' time. If somebody had said that in 2008 or 2007. No, because we're still using smartphones. We use them differently than what we did then. And it would have been smart for him to come out and say, yes, we have a playbook, and yes, it bombed in the market. So, it just sounded like sour grapes because they don't have a tablet. Well, one that works anyway. I mean, their tablet can't even send email. Yeah. So, so it was just kind of silly. It really was. It was silly.
Your point about smartphones is a great one. It was either this week or last week, now I've forgotten which, where smartphones now outsell feature phones, which I was shocked. Yeah. I would have thought that happened 2 or 3, 4 years ago. Shortly after the advent of the iPhone, and certainly with the advent of Android, so that there was a broader market, a broader choice of smartphones, and yet feature phones are now only slipping to second place. So how can you predict the death of anything? Well, short of netbooks, perhaps. But how could you predict the death of anything in 5 years when there's nothing on the horizon that clearly is going to take it out or replace it?
Well, and I think instead of replacing, what we're going to see is an evolution. There's no doubt that there's no doubt there's no doubt that tablets are going to change over the next 5 years. I think, we all recognize that. How that's going to happen, I don't think that we really know, because it's a situation where we're in now with like retina displays. We want retina displays, but it takes a certain amount of technology, and, is that technology available? I'd love to have my MacBook Air have it, but, is there enough in there to be able to run it? So it's where we think consumers are going to go and what they're going to need, and if that technology is available to make that happen. I mean, will we have like translucent iPods or iPads that, just sit in the middle of air and, we tap and it looks like I'm doing nothing, but I'm actually doing all kinds of funny things? Google Glass, is that going to take off, and is that going to be the next thing? I don't know, but that to me is more realistic in the things that are going to happen than to say that, nobody's going to use a tablet and they're going to be gone in 5 years. I don't think that we know if they're going to be gone in 5 years.
And I just don't see how they can be. And I say that laptops have not killed desktops. Tablets have not killed desktops. Smartphones have not killed desktops. Have they infringed in the territory? Absolutely. In fact, they've taken huge chunks out of it. But at the end of the day, there's still situations you need that. And there's still situations that people prefer it. And so, you're right. Google Glass, interesting product. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it develops and where it goes. With all the concerns around it, still the opportunities are huge. A smartwatch, whether it's developed by Apple, Google, Pebble, whomever, I think there's a place for that too. Exactly what its capabilities will be are going to depend, and they're going to depend a lot on how it can interface with something like an earpiece or Google Glass or maybe even a tablet.
Right.
So,
and it's going to get bigger than. I mean, we look at our devices now as computing devices, but it's going to get bigger than that. It's going to be our home. Our home is going to be connected in one way or another. So it'll be our entertainment system. It'll be, things in our kitchen, in our bedrooms, and things will be connected that we'll be able to control. And, that's not too far off. We're not talking, the Jetsons in 100 years that happening. We're, in some houses they have things like this happening now, but, I think that's going to happen more. And the way that we interact with things in our regular lives is what's going to dictate how things happen.
And if you think back on the last 5-10 years, the things that have caught on, the things that didn't catch on, but the ones that did, that you would never have believed would catch on the way they have, and the social changes that have occurred to make that acceptance, it is kind of staggering. I mean, we just talked about this on another show not long ago. The social norms that have changed now. If I'm sitting in a meeting and somebody's presenting and I'm looking at my iPhone or whatever, depending on who's in the room, that can be very socially acceptable or that can be very, very bad.
Yeah, you're right.
And usually that follows an age curve.
Yes, it does.
But and the younger people moving in, they're coming in with completely different expectations about privacy, about sharing, about social causes.
I don't know that they have any expectations of privacy. I mean, they people post everything on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah.
Everything. Is there any privacy? Is there any expectation? Do they even care? I don't think so.
I'm not sure. And I know that we all say, and I still subscribe to the fact that you have to be just a little careful, but I don't think it's going to be the scarlet letter in a few years that it would have been a few years prior. Whatever we're talking about, whatever they post.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is fun to talk about it and fun to look at, but you also have to wonder, to go back to our earlier discussion, was this just a link bait kind of comment? And if it was, I think he could have done better.
Who? Which one?
The CEO of
Oh, yeah. But he actually did say it, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is he trying to ruin his own career? I don't know.
I don't have an answer.
I don't think he does either.
Yeah, well, like you say, the prediction you made at the start of this was pretty good. One thing that'll be gone in 5 years. Jim, let's wrap up with, and I want to make sure I look down and get the notes right. 50 billion downloads.
Mm.
That's difficult to imagine.
It is. I mean, try and think of that number. I mean, 50 billion of something. That's an incredible amount.
Yeah. And over what period of time, and for arguably one platform.
Yeah. Well, it is one platform, many different devices, but one platform. Incredible. 50 billion downloads on the iOS App Store. Crazy. And they're giving away $10,000 to the person who downloads the 50 billionth app.
Which makes you want to go out and start downloading apps.
Yeah. But yeah, just like crazy.
Yeah, and of course, tying into that, we see WWDC selling out in 90 to 180 seconds, or 120 seconds, excuse me. You're just talking about the developer conference in Ireland. I just talked to the people from Alt WWDC who are organizing a sort of a parallel or in tandem conference with WWDC for the people that maybe couldn't get there. Yep. There's just an amazing amount of interest. And I'm sure that there's interest over on the Android side too. And I take nothing away from that. That's great. But we go back to the predictions of Apple being in trouble and Apple's market share falling and all. And it's just hard to buy when you see this kind of demand, this kind of popularity, and then a number like that. Well,
and that's just it. The reality of what happens doesn't match what the analysts and reporters say is happening. Like they say, oh, well, Apple isn't doing that good with iPhones. And Apple's not going to do great at profit this quarter, but yet they do. They always do. So, but it's okay because they're reporters and they can say whatever they want.
Yeah, and it's still, but it makes me feel good about people like you, people like the folks at the Mac Observer, at Macworld, at Tidbits, at a dozen other websites out there on the Mac side and on the tech side, because those people play it pretty straight. I think there's a lot of integrity there. They, even if they have a bent towards something, they aren't afraid to call a spade when something is wrong. In fact, you and some of the others are among Apple's harshest critics when things don't go right or don't go the way they should.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think that I owe the readers, is just that honesty, whether it's for Apple or against Apple, it doesn't matter. It's the honesty of saying what I think. If I go against the grain and say, no, I don't agree with you guys, I think that this is good for Apple, then, that's my opinion. And it's based on, 20 years of experience and my gut feeling on how things are. If that's wrong, then I'll admit I'm wrong. It's no big deal. I don't like being wrong. And if I can be proven to be wrong, then I accept that.
Yeah, but I'd rather see you be wrong with that attitude than wrong and saying you're always right.
Yeah. Well, I am always right, but
that's good. That goes without saying.
Monique says so. Anyway.
Yeah, one of these days, Jim, I'm going to call when you're not home, and I'm going to talk to Monique, get her on camera, and we're going to get the real scoop.
You should. That would be great.
So, what else is going on at the Loop? What's going on at Amplified, your podcast?
It's going along. Things are great. The Loop is bigger than ever. I'm loving what I do, and you just can't beat that. And you have Amplified, which I really enjoy doing too, because I get to talk about Apple and get to talk about music as well, and amps and guitars and everything else. So I'm just having a really good time.
It shows. You seem like you are, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. It's the way it should be.
Nothing like loving what you do.
Yeah. And don't you feel sorry for the people that don't?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, folks, if you're out there and not loving what you do, change. You could end up being as happy as Jim.
Yeah.
Look at that face. Okay, well, change what you do, but maybe don't.
I can give you grooming tips too.
That's right. I saw something about, what is it? Did beards make you healthier or something?
Healthier and better looking and smarter or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
just look.
I'll put a link. I'll have links in the show notes to everything all the stories we talked about here, back to the loops, including the beard story, so that you can appreciate it. Jim, it's so much fun. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Folks, quick reminder that we do have the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter. Sign up for it so you can kind of stay informed with what's going on, and definitely keep watching and listening to MacVoices because we have a lot of good stuff coming up. Until the next time, he's Jim Dalrymple. I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including MacVoices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the MacVoices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.